Hello,
Sorry, man.
I can see you. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, man?
Everything is good.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
You're up early or you still haven't gone to bed?
I'm up early.
It's normally your routine. You like to get up early or
I do get up early. I usually wake up at like 5.
oh, that's good. To go to the
Yeah,
gym, to play music, to work. What's that?
that's right. Yeah.
That's good. Anyway, let's talk about the Intergalactic Demon King. The album is out now. It's been a week, if I'm not wrong. How's been the reaction so far for the album?
Incredible. I knew it was a pretty good record. I didn't know I was going to be getting called a metal hero and having people say it was one of the better albums of the year. So it's fantastic. I'm thrilled.
Did it surprise you?
No, I mean I knew it was very good. I knew that it was for the right people. It was going to really hit home. I maybe didn't anticipate how many people from like the middle of rock music, like from heavy metal and kind of alternative rock, would appreciate a lot of the songs. But it seems like that's what's been going on.
Yeah. And for a start, how did music came into your life?
When I was young, I came from a musical family. My dad played piano when I was young, and my mom was a choreographer, so music was everywhere all the time. And then, of course, it was their music. It was Frank Sinatra and the Beach Boys. It was their generations of music. And then I think I don't know, something like 11 or 12, and somehow I saw a video of Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols. And I got it like immediately. I understood. And most kids that age, they actually kind of don't understand. They're like, why is he yelling? Uh, but for me, I saw like a revolution going on and I knew I had to be a part of it immediately. So I got a guitar. And for the first year of having a guitar, I didn't even play any chords or anything. I would just hold it and yell at people. That's sort of what I perceived when I saw Johnny Rotten, which wasn't too far from the truth in retrospect.
Yeah. And you play the piano as well. So your dad being, a piano player, I guess you took it from him as well. When do you start learning to play the piano as well?
I had dabbled when I was a kid where, I had a piano in the house. There was a nice Steinway in my house. And I always sat down at it and played and just tried to like figure stuff out. And then one day I do remember being like maybe 11 or 12, and my dad sat me down and taught me how to play the melody from Star Wars. And he taught me how to play it with like a really simple version with just fingers. And he taught me to go 1 5 4 3 2 1 5. And that like changed my life for a long time. But then it stayed dormant. And then about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, I started taking piano way more seriously because I'd gotten to a place on guitar, even, some time ago where not that things were getting boring, but like whatever I wanted to play, I could just figure it out. And I said to myself, I need to write some music and I need to like figure out a vessel for composing, and piano was that thing.
Yeah. And, you spoke about Steinway. And for me, when I see a piano like that, I don't play piano, but I want to sit on it and try to play.
Of course, yeah.
There's something special about those pianos that just, attract you into them.
Yeah, an elegant piano is like a beautiful piece. There is it attracts a certain kind of personality, and some people want to just own pianos and never play them, of course.
Yeah. I don't know how would you, buy an expensive, piece equipment and not use it,
Yeah, I don't know either.
It's beautiful. I get it, especially those long ones, but
Right.
you need to play them. I know you have to tune them, and it takes a proper expert sometimes to do that work. But when you have something like that, you have to play it.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't play it and it sits in your house, it goes into piano depression, and it's a sad piano.
Yeah, people don't get that a lot of the time anyway. And for these records, when did you start working on the songs?
Probably right around when the COVID lockdown started. So in very early 2020, some of the songs started coming into my fingers and through my amplifier. And I think the bulk of them got written rather quickly, like over the period of 6 months. And then, a lot of things were just fleshing them out, and they got recorded over a longer period of time because they were part of some of them were going to be part of separate releases. There was going to be an EP and a different full length album. And we kind of came up with this track listing that was kind of better.
Yeah. And, does it take long for you to write? I know you play most of the instruments on the record, apart from drums, you play everything. Does it take long for you to write a song?
It could happen in the space of an afternoon. It could be basically all done in a couple hours. Sometimes there's a guitar riff that sits around and it will come back later, and I will visit it and kind of flesh it out, but it can happen quite quickly.
Yeah. Does it, when you write, for this record, you had the concept in mind for, lyrics and story-wise. How did that came about, the Intergalactic Demon King?
It was kind of like, lyrically, the album deals with philosophical, historical, and psychological issues that interest me and provoke me. And the idea for it's not really truly a concept album. The songs are sort of like individual vignettes. They're not meant to necessarily all tie together, but there is a common theme, which is kind of like, my style is very prose and metaphorical a lot of the times. And it's meant to kind of be in the same rhythmic context as like epic poetry and like heavy prose. So that stuff has been coming together in my mind for like a very long time. It's, as long as I've read Shakespeare and Homer and all of those things, it's all been bubbling up for a very long time. And this was the first time I would say that I like really deployed it completely effectively in songs. I have other songs and I had songs before this, but it's a certain point I ended up being able to really, really get things tightly together in a way that was really satisfying, at least to my ear, before I started recording it, putting it out.
Yeah, it's funny to speak about Shakespeare and Homer, and it's not something I would envision like a younger person these days to read at all or be inspired by. And, it's a rare thing that classic authors are not, as read as much. I think because a lot of books have turned into movies and people prefer to watch the movies. But there's something special about reading a book that you don't get in a movie. And, I'm surprised that you mentioned those because, I wouldn't say that Shakespeare or Homer would be an inspiration for you or anyone these days. It's just, I'm old anyway, but it's just surprising.
No, this has been going on for a while. You will get chased out of a classroom at a university as a professor if you try to start really, really pushing classics on people who don't want them pushed on them.
Yeah.
And like, I think, another thing is when you're talking about like metal music in particular, you're talking about like a very wide range of thematic elements that get incorporated across bands. And like a lot of the newer bands, they're mainly dealing with like the like anger and like just really purely undistilled, like trying to tell you what their emotions are. Yeah. Like a lot of these bands, not to knock them, because I do like a lot of the newer bands. I like the melodies. Their lyrics are like very I'm crying, help me. And like, I get it. I can't do that.
No, I think, I understand where you're coming from because, if we turn on the TV for the news, there's so much anger, and also social media, especially now these days, everybody has an opinion anyway. And it's very, very polarized opinions. And, I'm at the stage that, I go on Twitter and I go on Instagram. I have Facebook mainly just because I have family there. But I'm getting so sick of the negativity that, I just keep buying records and listen to them as much as possible. and try to stay away from my smartphone as much as possible. And, I understand. And for me, I like when someone puts an effort in writing lyrics. I mean, I understand it's fine being angry at the world and the parents and everybody else, at politicians and everything. But, sometimes we need just to go into some imaginary world and stay there and live it for a bit instead of just being, oh, I'm so fucking pissed off. Why? And one of the things I enjoy about it, it's just, I like, you mentioned Star Wars, I love that universe. And it's just sometimes getting away from reality is a very good thing.
Well, I think one of the things is like metaphors and, the hierarchical structure of reality and the archetypal hero and how all these things kind of make a good story. They're deeply embedded in reality. Like Star Wars is true.
Yeah.
In like a very significant sense. Like, did the exact events happen? I don't know. It's possible, but the ideas behind the stories are maybe more true than you waking up and being mad. So I don't think it's a question about reality versus unreality. I think that it's a question of impulsiveness versus unimpulsiveness. And if you're going to be like this impulsive venal writer and you're just going to write the things that like immediately occur to you, it works for some people. Like there's some things that like, I think humor that way is sometimes really, really great. But I think when you think things through and you try to use the better parts of your mind, you can come up with things that are more eloquent, or at least say something that is bold in a more subtle way.
Yeah.
Whereas you don't have to sit there and, it's easier to say that you have a tough day ahead of you than it is to say, hey, I'm maybe enjoying the plight of Sisyphus today. Like, obviously, one of those is a little bit more interesting,
Yeah, and, for me, I'm a big wrestling fan. And I understand that, like in a WWE ring, you need to have a hero and a villain, and that plays out well because we people, when we're having fun sometimes and not, we love to boo, the bad guy. We love to cheer for the good guy. But I love when they call the tweener, when it just crosses both borders, and you're like, what I'm going to do now? And I remember, I'm speaking about wrestling. I watched WWE, and, Roman Reigns, he started at people booing him senseless. And now, even though he's like a bad guy, people cheer him. And, the bloodline, all that thing that goes on.
The thing about it, okay, so the opposite happened with Kurt Angle. They booed him because he was a good guy.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm Kurt Angle. I'm the Olympic champion. Yeah. Ethics. Gotta do right here in the WWE. Boo.
No, I love, when those characters, how people react sometimes to them. And, a guy like Kurt Angle, I know it was like for integrity, all that.
Yes, exactly. Right.
When people like, yeah. And it was just funny because he did embrace that, that character and just went forward with it. And, again, for me, WWE can be a metaphor of life in a way when you have like a bad guy and a good guy. But
it's everything. The writers on WWE are fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, really, they've always been really great. I was a huge wrestling fan for a long time, and I did scholastic wrestling in school. I was like really good at that. And like, it's always been in the back of my mind. And it's interesting how they craft different heroes with different like archetypal characteristics.
Yeah.
Like they're all kind of different. Like Stone Cold Steve Austin has this, I'm the beer drinking badass. Like maybe I'll show up for the match. I don't know. The Rock has got this kind of like, I'm a slippery fucking bear and I just jump around everybody. Ooh, rock bottom. Like it's all different. And they all have like these different flares to them. My favorite wrestler ever was Goldberg, though.
Yeah. And it's funny because Goldberg, for the wrestling purists, is you don't mention Goldberg to rest
Yeah.
in purists, because
Right.
they're going to fucking slay you from from I enjoyed Goldberg, back in WCW when he had that, amazing run.
Right.
And I think they built well on the character. Obviously the win, score was, overflated and everything, but I think they did a great job. And how could you not root for a guy that would pick up, Big Show? It wasn't Big Show, it was the Giant back then, and just like jackhammer him,
It's amazing. I remember that. I remember his first winning streak. Yeah, wrestling's cool, man.
Yeah, it was great. And I saw on Facebook that you mentioned Mozart as an inspiration as well. Classical composers are integral part of your inspiration musically.
Yeah, increasingly more so in recent years, but I've always, since I was quite, I don't know, and I was able to really get the message from Mozart when I was pretty young. And then recently, as I got better and better at piano and started getting it under my fingers, it became like a whole different thing where like I was able to really, really see the logic in a lot of stuff. And I was able to like really deploy a lot of the lessons in my own playing and composing, which was not, it's not something you think of as typical in rock music, but there's a lot of melodic similarities between a lot of the Eastern European classical music and modern rock music, because it's just like a lot of the same same types of people are making it. And yeah, I think it's very, very useful. And you can go into the history of that. Keith Emerson was kind of this voice for impressionist classical music within rock music. When he sat down and he played an acoustic piano, he had this style to him that was reminiscent of early ragtime players, but also just like insanely tight classical music. And that also had a large effect on me.
Yeah. And earlier you mentioned, the Sex Pistols, and what other, heavier artists in a way have shaped you, to become Zeke Sky in the way, and these Intergalactic Demon King records?
So I think one of the biggest ones, some people will have picked up on this, was a band called Coheed and Cambria.
Yep.
And Coheed and Cambria was from my hometown, or from the same place I grew up with in Nyack. And when I was about 12 or 13, they had their first like really solid label release. Like they had what I just had. And it was called "In Keeping Secrets of Silent Earth." And it had these really melodic guitar lines, like really like well thought out, nice guitar riffs and like clean guitar playing. And this like Claudio Sanchez, really melodic singing voice, really nice high operatic kind of sound. And it kind of distilled everything you wanted kind of Iron Maiden to do if they had a love child with like Rush, or even like a three-way love child with like Iron Maiden, Rush, and Blink-182. Some of the songs veered into pop punk kind of territory. And that was like right up my alley. And then I didn't get into metal at all until I was in my 20s. Like before I was in my 20s, I was all just prog, classical music, psychedelic music. And then when I was like 21, like pretty old, like not old, but like older for like learning, I heard Steve Vai and all of that. And I kind of learned more what the limitations of guitar really could be, that you really could become like just like a super mega virtuoso on guitar, which is sort of clear from the 70s prog stuff, but everything got taken to a different level in the 80s and 90s, obviously.
Yeah. Do you think metal is a limiting style when you play music?
Yeah, and that's why I made this record, by the way. Like, I think a lot, you can really get into a box here, and it makes me nervous because I can't listen to songs that have like very just basic song dialogue. It's not even about structure. It's about like the riff, and can it flow, and would this piece of music sound good if it wasn't a guitar song? Like if you just played this on piano or you played it on violin, would that sound cool? And if you ask yourself that question about a lot of metal, you're going to kind of end up thinking, no, it's a guitar. It's creating an atmosphere. There's nothing about this melody that I would ever remember. And that always makes me nervous.
Yeah. But, there's a lot of criticism in a way to a younger generation because, you use social media well to, to create your brand in a way. You see a lot of on YouTube, on Instagram and everything. And there's a lot of criticism because, we see them play other people's music, but we always question, are they able to write their own songs? Are they able to write good songs? And for me, it's always a question that, I grew up with Deep Purple and, Made in Japan record. For me, it's one of the prime examples of a live record and a band because they jam between, in the songs, they go into these, whatever thing that goes on in their heads in that moment, and then they come back to the song. I don't see a lot of new bands and artists being able to do something like that. And in a way, for me, that shows musicianship back in the day. And I'm not sure if a younger generation are able to jam live on stage if they're feeling in the moment, if they can do that. And, there's a lot of criticism in the younger generation. Are they able to write songs and everything? What's your take on, do you think, old people like me are way too much critical of a younger generation? They don't give them the right opportunity?
Did you see my Facebook post about this?
Yeah, I did.
So let me distill this in the way that doesn't get me skewered. Look, I think every generation has this way of reflecting negatively on the new generation's music. The Beatles show up in America, and most of the parents say, this is over-sexualized crap. Get this away from my kids. This is horrible. The Beatles are the most important music that was produced in the last 200 years. Okay. Why is this the reaction? It shouldn't be. You would think that, the rite of passage of music is something that everyone feels in the prime of youth, in that June of life. But for whatever reason, the older generation sort of kind of crystallizes the music that they heard as being the best. And to be honest, I think there's maybe some fairly obvious psychological reasons for this. I think it's probably safe to say that a lot of people connect very, very highly with the music they're exposed to at an early age and the genres, and your brain's kind of a sponge then. You think this is how things should be. But the truth of the matter is that there are a lot of incredible new songwriters. There are a lot of incredible new bands. Was there some kind of heyday of rock music where there are a lot of bands putting out good songs? Sure, it's definitely true. There was definitely a time where that happened. But there's great albums coming out all the time now. I think because rock and roll music was kind of a newer art form in the 70s and 80s, it had more inherent interest to it. But man, the guitar players in metal are better now. Yeah. There's too many good vocalists to even name them. The bars have been raised for just about everything you could play, and it simply can't be the case that humans are suddenly popping out of the womb with less abilities than they had 30 or 40 years ago. It's the opposite. Evolution tells us that we should be getting better at things. So the naysayers bother me. One of them is Gene Simmons. I'm going to call him out right now. He goes on to Loudwire. He goes to all of these magazines and he said, the whole thing's over. There's no talent in rock music anymore. And it wouldn't piss me off if it wasn't for the fact that it turns off New Year's, A, and B, it's like the guy extracted what he needed, right? He extracted his thing from the rock music industry, and now he's perfectly happy to snail along and kind of knock everyone else who would go that way. And that is a really sad state of affairs.
Yeah. And, I love Kiss, but they haven't put music in, I don't know how many years. Good music. It's been too long, I guess. Since Revenge, they haven't made good music. And we're talking about 1990 something. So the kind of, I have a special opinion about Gene Simmons. Obviously, he likes to make money. He loves money, and that's all he thinks about. And as long as he makes money, it's all good with him. But for newer bands, I recently talked with Scott LePage from Polyphia, and they are one of the bands, the newer bands that are able to cross genres and be fucking interesting. Their new record is fucking amazing. The guitar playing there, it just, puts to shame a lot of old people, so to say. And, I agree with you. There's a lot of new talent, but because there's a lot of music coming out, we don't have the chance to listen to a lot of that great music that's being put out. And I think that's a problem.
I don't know. I think Polyphia, if we're gonna name bands, I mean, Polyphia is one of the bands that has they're a pretty big band on the internet for sure. I think they're one of the bands that show that if you do try to do something innovative and you push it long enough, you get into people's ears. Listen, they're an inch. I mean, I haven't heard the new record, but I've heard their songs. I've heard mostly instrumentals. The fact that they would attract attention is a sign of something good, actually, to me, even though I might not listen to tons and tons of instrumental guitar music at this point. I think that you're right. There's a certain saturation, but there's not a saturation with bands that are really doing genuine, unique, new stuff that's really of a high level. There's a lot of formulaic bands out there that have maybe they have a great guitar player, they have a great vocalist, and they're pretty successful. But the amount of truly innovative bands out there that are getting wholly unnoticed, probably less of that, I think.
Yeah.
I think the internet really, really changed that in some ways. But I could be totally wrong. There could be thousands of bands bubbling up beneath the surface that I've never heard of.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there is, a lot of bands that's probably I haven't heard and I probably won't heard, because at the end of the day, we are, me as a journalist, I'm limited to what labels send me sometimes. And, but, I like to go on Instagram and I like to go on YouTube and I like to try to see what's happening. Sometimes the algorithm is good, sometimes it's not that good, but maybe there is. And for you, what are new artists that have impressed you somehow, or newer bands that have impressed you?
There's a couple. Here's the strange part of this conversation is I'm pressed to say there aren't tons and tons, but there's one. Helix Nebula is an awesome band. It's Steven Toronto's project. I think there's another guitar player in it. It's just amazing guitar work. Symphony X is not a newer band, but their records and Michael Romeo has been putting out solo records that are fantastic.
I'm a big fan of Symphony X, by the way.
Yeah, Symphony X is really cool. There's a band called Persephone that I think is really cool. But truthfully, a lot of my listening dialogue, I think a lot of it happens in the 2000s to 2010s. So that second generation of those bands. But, if you go on Spotify and you look at an artist that you really like, chances are you're going to find something else that you like.
Yeah. I use Apple Music. I don't have Spotify. I have Apple stuff. So I just decided to stick with Apple Music anyway. And when it comes to you, as an artist with a new album coming out, is there any touring possibilities? We see a lot of bands canceling tours, limiting their tours. Is there anything happening for you, or you're just going to focus on the writing side of music?
No, we're going to play. It's just, I'm not going to do anything that compromises me. I'm not in some crazy hurry to do it. I know a lot of people, they get into music for the idea that they're going to go on tour, and it turns out their music is really bad. If you just get into music because you want to go on tour and you figure out, you're just trying to figure out a way to make your music good so that you can go on tour, it's never a recipe for success. And I think that that's a lot of what goes on, unfortunately. Yeah, we're definitely going to play. I've been getting the band into ship shape. I anticipate more demand for the band, but we'll see what happens.
So anyway, Zeke, thank you very much for your time. All the best for the Intergalactic Demon King. Hope you guys tour, and hope you guys are able to come to Europe and play some shows. And fingers crossed for better days for touring bands. And I hope to see you soon. And if you don't tour, new music.
Yes, for sure, man.
All right, Zeke, thank you very much for your time. Have a great day, and I hope to see you soon. All right.
All right, I'll see you later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.